Hello friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with the story in which our OP, once a teenager living with their grandparents, discovers the shocking betrayal of a family member. I just found out my cousin stole my inheritance that my grandparents left me. It was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was 15 years old, living with my grandparents alongside my 3 brothers. We lived with them for 6 years until they passed away, and during that time, they always assured us that we'd be taken care of after they were gone. They told us about life insurance, how it worked, and that they'd set things up to secure our future. It gave us some comfort knowing we wouldn't be left to fend for ourselves when they passed. I remember one day vividly, we were visiting my grandma in the nursing home for what turned out to be the last time. I overheard my cousin, who none of us were particularly close with, talking in the hallway about paperwork. She mentioned something about being the power of attorney and needing to sign some things. At the time, I didn't fully understand what that meant, but I had a sinking feeling in my stomach when I looked it up later. Why was she in charge? No one in the family liked her much, and we all thought it was odd. A few years later, I got the courage to ask her about it. I asked what my grandparents had left me, what happened with the inheritance they had promised us. We met at a local Walmart, and all she gave me were 2 old shotguns that belonged to my grandpa. When I pressed her on what happened to the rest of it, she brushed me off, saying there was nothing left and acted like it wasn't her problem. It felt like a slap in the face. I told her about the promises my grandparents made, but she didn't seem to care. She just shrugged and continued living her life. Over time, I started noticing things. She suddenly had 2 brand new cars, and she was moving into her 3rd new construction home. Meanwhile, my brothers and I were left homeless after our grandparents passed. We struggled for years to get back on our feet, scraping by to rebuild our lives. All this while, she was living comfortably, sending her kids to universities, though they flunked out, while we were barely surviving. Now, knowing what I know, I feel betrayed, angry, and devastated. It's like everyone knew what she had done except for us. It hurts to think that someone from my own family could do something so heartless, taking what was meant for us and watching us struggle without saying a word. It's quite possible that your grandparents hope to leave something for you. It's also possible that nursing home care at around $8,000 a month per person ate up most of their assets. And our second story. Steal my beauty products? You're in for a surprise. A few years ago, when I was a student, I lived in a shared house type situation with 5 other people. We each had our own rooms, but there were 2 bathrooms that we had to share. There was a smaller 3rd space that was just a small room with a shower and a teeny tiny sink and vanity. To be honest, it was the smallest room, and because it was an old house, it wasn't the prettiest looking space, and some of the mildew and damp patches could get bad in the winter, but it had the best shower pressure, so I preferred to use that space to shower. About a month after my friend moved out and another girl moved in, I noticed that I was having to buy shampoo and conditioner more often than usual. Now, other people used to keep some of their personal belongings in the bathrooms, but it was easy to identify whose was who. Or sometimes it'd be named. It's that thing, or if you want to use something or borrow something, then ask. I didn't think much of it at that time. I just put it down to maybe I was using more product than I usually was. I always wash my hair at night, and back then I used to have a late night job, so I put it down to me being tired after classes during the day and work at night and not keeping an eye on the amount of product I was using. The tiny vanity in that smaller shower room had an even tinier cupboard, and in that cupboard I kept a small pink basket with some of my other things in there. I knew that someone was definitely using my beauty products when my glass pot of face cream had very clearly been used and the lid wasn't screwed on properly. I have quite sensitive skin, and the face moisturizer cream I like to use is expensive. You only need a small amount anyway, but this had clearly been dug into. Someone had really gone deep in that pot of what at the time I considered to be near to gold. It was that expensive for me to buy. I always used to make sure the lid was screwed back on properly. I was that paranoid about storing it a certain way to make sure it didn't leak or spill out. I had a feeling it may have been the new girl who was using my stuff. She used the smaller bathroom as it was right next to her room. My shampoo also has a really distinct smell, and I was certain one night as she sat near me I could smell it. When once again my face cream had been dug into, I hatched a plan to try and get the face cream fiend. I had a bottle of gradual fake tan, so I scraped the face cream out of its original pot and put it in something else, and then I squeezed some of the fake tan into the face cream jar. The fake tan cream is white, the same as the face cream, and the more you use it, the more tan gradually builds, so I sat back and waited. I made sure to check the jar that I put back in its place in my basket of goodies, and it was definitely being used. I watched as the new girl's face continued to subtly darken and go orange over the coming weeks until she herself noticed and stopped using my face cream. My shampoo and conditioner also remained untouched after that. I moved out of the house a while ago, but from time to time I see the girl around and bump into her. It always makes me smile. Great plan, OP. I like that you got your subtle revenge. Gives you pleasure over time, and the panic that girl must have had? That's given me pleasure. And our next story. Idiot manager lies to new employee and then gets made to look silly in front of most of his team. I was working at a dodgy retail place where I'd been told I could earn commission, and they told me how that worked. You had to hit a particular figure, but once you had got commission on everything, I was very careful to clarify that this included the threshold amount, not just everything over that figure. The figure was pretty high for what the shop was, but I figured it was possible with a bit odd hustle. This place was miserable. It was basically a high street pawn shop in the UK, and the manager was an utter jerk. However, I was young, needed a job, and thought I could earn okay money with commission. Get a couple of weeks in, and I hit the threshold for the first time. Great. Keep getting it in the following weeks while I'm waiting for that first paycheck with my nice little commission bonus pay to start rolling in. I get the first pay slip with the commission, my jaw drops, and crushing disappointment sets in. This is only payment on the sum after the threshold. Jerk lied to me. Needless to say, I'm pissed off at this point, and I realize there's nothing I can do about it. The manager is a git, and he's not going to admit his lie or change it. This is when I start looking for another job ASAP. I was lucky and found a better job in a little over a week, better pay, easier to get to. Result. I wrote my letter of resignation accepting that I had to give a week's notice and then work it. Annoying, but not really an issue. I did think it'd be fun to call him on it though, and not just in private, but in front of as many staff as possible. Fortunately, we had a daily staff meeting where we basically stood around for a couple of minutes. Perfect time. At the end of the day, I seize my chance. Me equals me, JM equals jerk manager. Me. Why did you tell me commission was on the full amount instead of just the amount over the threshold? JM. I didn't. Me. Yes, you did. If you remember, I specifically clarified this with you. It's the main reason I took the job. JM. I didn't say that. Shouting a bit by this point. Me. Yes, you did. I wouldn't be here if you hadn't. JM. You calling me a liar? You're fired. Me. Funny that. I was about to give you this. I then pulled out my letter of notice and showed it to him. To my immense satisfaction, this was met with a round of applause from most of the rest of the staff. The best bit, though? Because he fired me, they paid me for that next week without me having to go in. Always get everything in writing. There are plenty of HR managers who refuse to do anything in writing. They know all the evil trickery. And our next story. The idiot and the handicapped parking spot. When I was attending school, adult education career training, one of my classmates, Bob, had an artificial leg. Other than walking with a limp and not being able to stand for long periods, you wouldn't really notice. He had a large van and handicap plates, but unless he had to, he didn't always use the handicap parking spots, leaving them for people who really needed them. So one winter day, it had snowed the day before, and the parking lot had been plowed, but was very icy and not at all safe for someone like him to walk on. As he pulled in at 8:30 for the 9 o'clock morning class, he saw someone parked in a handicap spot. Bob checked the license plates and looked for a hanging placard on the rearview mirror. Nothing. So he parked sideways behind the car, blocking it in. About 30 minutes into class, a young guy came in and interrupted the instructor and asked who owned the dark blue van blocking his car. Bob said, "It's mine. Why do you ask?" He said he had a job interview and needed to leave right now, so could you please move your van? Bob told him that now was not a convenient time and that when class was over in 90 minutes, he'd be happy to move it. When the guy said that it was not an appropriate answer, Bob replied that parking in a handicap parking spot with an icy parking lot was not an appropriate action. The guy was highly agitated, and Bob was totally unsympathetic. The guy went through the usual excuses. I was only going to an appointment in the office and wasn't going to be that long, yada, yada, yada. Bob remained silent. Guy got more pissed. Eventually, he threatened to call the cops. Bob said, please do. It'll save me the trouble, and they'll not only issue you a ticket, but possibly tow your vehicle as well. Bottom line, we went back to working on our lab assignment. Guy sat in his car, PO'd, and listening to his radio. At 11 o'clock, after slowly packing up everything, we went out to head off to lunch. Bob moved his van, and the guy flipped us off and screamed some choice comments about our parentage and sexual proclivities and peeled out of the parking lot very late to his interview. His prospective employer learned something about the guy's reliability, and hopefully he was smart enough not to tell them why he was late. Also, hopefully he learned a lesson about parking in handicap parking spots, but somehow I doubt it. I wept with joy to hear one of these handicap spot-stealing jerks get their due. Hats off to Bob. And our last story. Fake HOA wants to put a lien on my home. When we first bought our home and the land it sat on, we knew we were in a unique spot. Our neighborhood was run by a company that managed the lots and homes here. A lot of folks rent both the land and house from them, but we went the normal home buying route. That means the managers of the neighborhood don't have any actual financial stake in our property, yet they sure do act like they have all the control. For example, there's this association that runs things. They try to pretend they're an HOA, but there's no official homeowners association here. They're a group of people who think they've got more power than they actually do. One of the things they demand is a monthly amenities fee, which supposedly covers upkeep and gives residents access to the boat launch, fishing pier, and swimming pools. When we moved in, they told us there was no HOA, but the way this association operates, you'd think they were trying to create one. They've gone as far as sending letters saying they'd hire contractors to fix things on my house and bill me for it. Like the time a hurricane took part of my porch roof. I didn't see the need to rush and fix it. It wasn't impacting the house at all, but no, they wanted it done and tried to push me to repair it. I told them to kick rocks. Then there was the time we had a super pollen-heavy spring and the house looked like it could use a good wash. They sent another letter saying they'd hire a company to power wash it and bill me for it. My response, same as before, kick rocks. I even joked to my wife, hoping they'd go ahead and do it for free at that point. Spoiler alert, they never did. Now they've gone and raised the amenities fees, a pretty steep hike at that. On top of that, they're saying we can't pay by traditional check anymore, which was the only way we ever paid. Instead, they're demanding everyone hand over their bank information for automatic withdrawals. Like I'm going to trust them with that. The kicker is they're threatening to put a lien on anyone's home if they don't comply with their new system. I've looked into this a bit, and I'm fairly certain that the amenities fees aren't even mandatory, at least not in the way they think. Sure, if I stop paying, I assume they could bar me from using the communal spaces they own, like the pool or boat launch, but that's it. They don't have any real grounds to put a lien on my home or send me to collections. Now they're all puffed up, acting like they're the law of the land, but legally, I'm almost sure the only thing they can really do is revoke access to the amenities I rarely use anyway. They're pushing their luck, and I'm about ready to push back. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.